following program is intended for mature audiences.
You're listening to Basically a Sports Show.
Follow us on Twitter at Basically Sports.
Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes.
And download every episode and more at basicallyasportshow.com.
Now here's your hosts, Zach,
Greg, Mike.
And you're listening to Basically a Sports Show.
I have the perfect question to start us off.
Well, okay then. Go ahead. Start us off with the perfect question.
America, what did you do?
Well, you know, I actually think, and believe it or not, I think I have an answer for that. I think that a lot of people are saying, America really failed or it did this or that, but in a weird sort of way, I think that America stepped up and showed that when it's fed up, it gets fed up and strange things can happen. And this is what happened here. I don't even know where to begin. I guess we'll just start at the beginning. How stunned were you at what we saw happen last Tuesday night?
I don't want to say stunned because, all right, when the returns started coming in from Florida and Virginia, and just, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I am a Canadian citizen. I'm here as a resident alien, a legal resident alien, mind you. So hopefully I can avoid the deportation force that's sure to come. But point being that I didn't vote, so I get to play the morally superior card because I had no hand in this disaster. But when the returns for Florida and Virginia started coming in, and I had heard the day of that in the Trump camp, the mood was pretty somber, and in the Clinton camp it was pretty excited because apparently both camps had similar polling results for Florida that said that Clinton was going to take it relatively easily.
Right.
And then, so the first results start coming in, and Trump's ahead, and you don't get too worried there because it's basically first results come in basically means that they've counted like 50 ballots in one county, right? So that doesn't really amount to anything.
Right, and the rural areas always come in first because there's less of them to count. So, yeah, you always think, well, when the big cities come in, it'll be a different story.
Mm-hmm. And so Florida switched back and forth a few times before it kind of settled into the Trump lead. Like, Florida, was leaning Trump, then Clinton, then Trump again. I think it switched, 5-6 times before, Trump finally sort of held on. But when I saw that Clinton was failing to keep a grip on Florida, and when I saw that she was barely hanging on to Virginia, I kind of knew that there was going to be problems. And so, to me, it wasn't so much a shock as much as it was just like a slow, gradual,
yeah, I guess stunned
sort of feeling.
Stunned is the wrong word because it wasn't like she was winning and all of a sudden out of nowhere they went, oh, hey, wait a minute. Just like the realization of when it was over. And to me, it took place around 9:30 when I was watching MSNBC. Yes, I watch MSNBC because, yes, I'm a Democrat, and fuck you if you don't like it. And what's his name? Brian Williams started running off these states, and he's going, Minnesota, too close to call. Michigan, too close to call. Wisconsin, too close to call. Florida. And I thought, at 9:30 at night on Election Tuesday, if Minnesota and Wisconsin and to a lesser extent Michigan are too close to call, the Democrats are in a whole lot of trouble. Because if she was going to win by the projected numbers, she should have had it wrapped up by 10 o'clock Tuesday night, was the way I saw it. And when those states started coming in too close, especially the quote-unquote blue wall of Wisconsin and Minnesota, I knew right then. I said, man, if she can't even take those comfortably and handily right now, she's in a lot of trouble. And we saw what happened from there.
To me, it was sort of a similar situation. When I finally kind of gave up on it, and kind of accepted that Trump had won was when it was clear that she was not closing the gap on him in Minnesota, not Minnesota, but in Michigan and Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Because, everyone was saying that, if Trump's only chance at victory is if he's able to break through with either Michigan or Wisconsin. And I saw him, first he gained, early leads. And again, you don't want to overreact to that. But when I saw that those leads weren't going away, I think it was a bit later than you. I went to bed around 10, maybe. And I went to bed at 10, pretty much accepting it. I kind of still held out like a glimmer of hope that maybe I'll wake up and like everything kind of turned around at the last second. Like, you never know.
Mm-hmm.
But I woke up around 4 in the morning, like barely awake. I kind of just like rolled over, checked my phone. President Trump was on the CNN app. And I was like, ugh. And then I kind of just like fell back asleep for another 2 hours before I got up to go to work.
It was quite a night. I don't even know how. I've never been. I mean, I brag about it all the time. Starting in 2004, the only state I ever missed in all 3 presidential elections, let's see, 4, 8, and 12, was Virginia in 2012. I called every map exactly right except for that one state. This one, it was a disaster. I didn't even come close. It was so bad at how far I missed the mark on this. And that's the thing. I don't understand how all the polls could have been that wrong.
I think I have an understanding of it because, okay, to really kind of go back to a couple months previously, over the summer. We talked about it on this show, the Brexit vote.
Yeah.
And congratulations, America. You can no longer feel superior over the fact that the UK voted for the Brexit, because then you went ahead and did what you did. But the Brexit vote, right, kind of had a very similar situation where, like, everyone thought Remain was going to win. And, like, people were confidently saying Remain was going to win. And then, the day of happens, and it's a narrow leave victory. And, again, if we look at the popular vote, which I know doesn't matter in a presidential election, but if we look at the popular vote, again, Clinton won the popular vote narrowly, but again, a narrow election result. So in both cases, you sort of have polls indicating that it's going to be a comfortable win for one side. Other side wins in a close election. And honestly, I think that but it goes deeper than that, because I think the same sort of people who voted for the Brexit leave option are the same sort of people who voted for Trump. And I'm not going to say, the same as in, racist xenophobes or anything like that. I think the majority of people who voted for Trump are people who are sort of, I guess, fed up with the current political status quo.
I agree.
I think they are people in communities outside of the outside of the major centers of culture and economic power, basically outside of the big city, basically people in smaller cities and rural towns in both the Brexit and the Trump vote who feel as if they have basically been left behind by the system.
Yep.
And I think in both cases, polling got it wrong for the same reason. In both cases, all right. Here's a good way to sort of explain it. Polling, in my opinion, and might get someone who disagrees with me on this, but it is my opinion that polling is an outgrowth of media. that basically the media industry and the polling industry are bound at the hip. And I think in both the U.S. and the U.K., in the past, you used to have a fairly representative media industry in that you had, your major networks, which were centered in major cities, and you had your major newspapers in your major cities, but you also had print media. But you also had a healthy print media industry in these smaller cities and small towns. Those newspapers are more or less extinct now.
Yeah.
They're gone. And so as a result, media, and by proxy, the polling industry, is sort of been isolated in the centers of economic, social, and cultural power, big cities, essentially. And I think in both cases, polling was so off the mark because the people who ushered the Brexit Leave vote to victory and the people who ushered Trump to victory, the same sort of people, poor white, basically the poor white electorate, both, that group of people in both countries felt like they had been abandoned. They felt like they had been forgotten. And this was the means for them to sort of make that message clear. And the polling completely missed the ball on them because in the minds of what constitutes media these days, these people either don't exist or they're unimportant.
I think you hit it right on the head with the second word there, unimportant. And there is it's amazing to me. I shouldn't say it's amazing, but my eyes, I had my head so far up my own ass in this election that I'm astonished at myself. When I started watching the post-election analysis and stuff, I went, how in the hell did we all miss this? But it's easy because it's so easy to discount Trump as I thought of it in terms of like a fan base for a team. We think of Red Sox fans as being insufferable assholes, and they certainly are. But I think in reality, we all know that they're just the loudest and the ones that make the most noise, and maybe they don't represent the entirety of the Red Sox fan base. And I think that's what happened with Trump here. We all assumed, well, it's going to be nothing but angry, racist, white guys that are going to vote for this guy, and there's nowhere near enough of them to carry him to victory. But guess what? There were a whole lot of people that either don't think like – either one of two things happened here. Either there were a whole lot of people who we did the old, the loudest makes the most noise, and that's who we assume they're all like, and they all aren't. Or this country's got a bigger race problem than we ever imagined. But in either case – it wasn't just simply the ones we thought that were going to vote for him that did. I mean, it was astonishing, the numbers. He did well, not well, I guess, but better with women than I would have ever guessed in a million years. Mm-hmm. He got a lot of Latino vote, and I don't know that it's easy to just, wipe it away and go, look, it's just a bunch of racists and stuff, but I don't think that's what happened here. And I don't think it's... It was just a thing where I think, like you said, people were fed up. I think that Jack, from basically a Geek Show, is the perfect example of what happened here. I don't think Jack's a racist. I know he's not an idiot, but he was fed up. And it was like, look, I want to blow this up. I don't care how we do it. It has to be done. And I think that's what happened. And we totally discounted that. We thought, well, at the end of the day, there's not enough people out there that are that fed up, et cetera, except guess what? There were. And a lot more than we thought there were.
No, there definitely were, and I think there is a racial component in this, but not in the way that a lot of people might think, and that is that again, the people who ushered in both the Brexit vote and ushered Trump to the presidency. This vote, these two votes in combination, because once is an anomaly, but twice is a pattern, and so now I think we can say there's a pattern that we need to recognize as liberals, as progressives, as social democrats, as socialists, however you want to describe yourself, as progressives, as left-wing people, however you want to place yourself on that spectrum, but all of us on the left, we need to realize that we can no longer assume that class and race are fundamentally linked, because here's the thing. For so long, maybe not so long, but currently, at least under the current Democratic leadership, going back to at least Clinton, Bill Clinton, that is, as far as the Democratic Party was concerned, poor equals black, poor equals Latino.
Yep.
And that was the and that was the that was the way under, Bill Clinton and every Democrat that followed him. That's how the Democratic Party has understood race and how it's understood class. And as a result, the poor white vote, the poor white portion of the electorate felt. I mean, their natural home should be the Democratic Party, but it's not, because they have felt abandoned by the Democratic Party.
Absolutely.
And so, as a result, they turned to a guy who was not just willing to say the Democratic Party is broken, he was willing to say the Republicans were broken, because Donald Trump really did not spare his own party.
No.
In this. And so that's the thing. Look, yes, there are, of course, ties between look, I'm not going to be blind to the obvious fact that yes, in the Western world, in the United States specifically, that often minority groups, specifically blacks and Hispanics, are economically segregated for the most part. I'm not going to deny that. But we need to stop thinking, we on the left need to stop thinking of poverty as poverty equals black, poverty equals Latino, because it doesn't. I think we've known it doesn't for a long time. And as a result, the poor white vote, who should find a natural home in the Democratic Party, simply have left it because they don't see the Democratic Party caring about their plight. To your average poor white voter, the Democrats are only interested in poverty when it comes to, say, inner cities.
Right. And I want to say that I think a lot of people misinterpret that anger towards the party as racism. And I'm not saying, look, there are certainly, only an idiot would come on here and say that there isn't an element of racism in the Trump supporter base. That's certainly there. But I think a lot of people, including a lot of us here in the Democratic Party, immediately equated with why. What I heard a lot of was that a lot of the poor whites were like, why is all the attention focused on the blacks and Latinos? What about us? And I don't know. I don't know if there's necessarily if there's any truth to that or not. I don't think so. I think that if you need entitlement programs, they don't say, well, you're black, so you get it, but you're white, that you don't. But there was certainly an easy perception there. There was certainly the it didn't take much to look at it and go, huh? And it just,
well, you're right, Greg. There isn't, if you're applying for food stamps, right? There isn't it's not like they give it to you if you're black, but not if you're white.
Right.
That's. But at the same time, politics is more than policy. Politics is more than, the results on the ground. I like to say that, there are two realities. There's the reality, and then there's the public perception of reality, and it's the latter that ultimately matters. Mm-hmm. And you just have to look at pop culture. And, for example, all right, if you have a character in a TV show who is a young black man from the inner city, and who his character is from a, disadvantaged economic situation. He's from a, maybe a single parent home in the inner city. That character is either going to be a protagonist, and part of the narrative is going to be him getting out of that situation and bettering himself, or if he is a villain, he will be presented sympathetically. Whereas if you have a white character from a economically disadvantaged small town, at best he's going to be a villain. At worst, he's going to be a punchline of a character.
Yep.
And again, this is pop culture, not politics, but you really can't separate the two either because they kind of feed off of each other. And I think for the longest time, a lot of people sort of did exactly what you said, Greg. When you had like the poor, the poor rural white vote who saw, they saw their communities basically break down. They saw Walmart completely decimate their local economy. When they see all this stuff happen, and when they complain about it, and then when the Democratic Party, which should be the party of the disadvantaged, doesn't care, but instead only sees poverty in terms of Hispanic and black poverty, they are going to feel abandoned. And when people feel abandoned, they turn to national populism. And that's exactly what happened. Yeah. I think, honestly, and yeah, it's easy to sort of take that attitude and decry it as racist. And I don't think it can't be that easy to dismiss that viewpoint anymore, because this election was all about the rural, economically disadvantaged white vote basically saying enough. And the Democratic Party needs to take that vote seriously if they are going to continue on as the party of the disadvantaged. Now, I guess what I'm saying is that the Democratic Party and more broadly those of us on the left need to do a better job spreading the message that a black youth in the inner city and a white youth in an economically disadvantaged rural town are both victims suffering from the same system in different ways.
Yep.
And we can't ignore one at the expense of the other. We can't promote one at the expense of the other anymore. Like we need to start taking that seriously. We need to start realizing that these voters exist and they do matter. And lo and behold, if you ignore them, they will not only abandon your movement, but they will do some. They are capable of doing something pretty unprecedented and in some ways terrifying to make their voices heard.
And they did exactly that, which is just what was the. I just go back to how, and we made fun of the guy a lot. We bashed him. We were like, "Oh, you're such a true believer." But our buddy the Admiral and the political threat on the boards, he was out in front on this. He knew what was going on. I don't necessarily think that maybe he presented it in the best possible light sometimes, but he was warning us every step of the way with this thing. This is what's going on out here, and you guys just don't see it. And the Democratic Party doesn't see it. And we're like, oh, you're just a Bernie guy. You're a Bernie bro. You're just, oh, wow, how cute. You're such a true believer and all that. And I think to some extent, there was a little bit of that. But he saw it. And when we said, he told us, he said, we shouldn't be, we should be going to people like Tank, to bring up another board reference, and board listeners know who we're talking about. We should be going to Tank and going, look, here's why you need to vote for us instead of Trump. And we were like, oh, that's ridiculous. You can't possibly do that. He was exactly right.
No, he was.
Because those are the people that we had to go get, and we just completely and totally ignored them. And made the, you made the assumption, look, Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, they're in the bag. Nothing to worry about there. These are our people. But guess what?
Mm-hmm.
They're not our people anymore, and they showed us they're not our people anymore because you get tired of it. You get tired of I don't even know what it is. I understand that things aren't going well, and they see a system that is just more of the same. And they went out and said, enough is enough is enough. And
what they're tired of is they're just
lip service.
They're tired of lip service. They're tired of being taken advantage of. And I think ultimately what they're tired of. And again, it goes back to feelings, I think, of being abandoned. That the party that's supposed to be the party of the disadvantaged, they're saying, our communities are falling apart. Our local economy's been decimated. We are part of the disadvantage of this country, and the Democratic Party has made it clear for a long time that, again, poverty is black, poverty is Latino. And
there's something else too. I want to the party itself and the imaging, whatever you want to call it, somebody posted on Twitter. I saw this on the Cracked.com site that we both frequent. Mm-hmm. Well, this guy basically come out and said to the Democratic Party, "I'm begging you, come up with a tactic other than celebrities mugging in the camera telling us how stupid the GOP is." And I thought, my God, that hits the nail right on the head. Well, I don't disagree. I don't know if you saw the Robert De Niro video where he's like, I want to punch Trump in the face. I don't disagree with the sentiment, but I cringed every time I saw that. Because I got to be honest with you, the guys that live in my neighborhood here in Ohio, they don't give a fuck about Robert De Niro. And when that's that's the face of your party, or when you see just like the guy on Twitter said, the celebrities mugging for the camera, telling us how dumb Republicans are. That shit's not resonating with anybody, especially out in rural Ohio. That's not working out here because this is a place where it doesn't work. And there was just so many things that I saw that the party did that were just so cringeworthy that looking back on it now, I was in cruise control. Like I said, I had my head up my ass. I'm like, look, there's no way that they're going to vote for this guy. And I was as bad as everybody else, so I didn't take it seriously. And just cruise control. Hillary's not the greatest candidate, but she's what we've got. Blah, blah, blah. And you underestimated so many things, like you said, with the disadvantaged white poor in the rural areas. I think it was you that posted that article from Cracked about that. That was like just a brilliant take on the whole thing.
Yep. It was. I thought that was very poignant, and at the time when I read it, I said that's a very good take. It got me thinking kind of along those lines, but at the same time, I didn't quite take it as a sign that Trump was winning. I still kind of thought Hillary had it in the bag, and I thought, well, Hillary will win it this time, and this is probably something that the Democrats can work on in the future. I had no idea how imminent that problem was, and like you, I had my head up my ass. I was wrong. It's as simple as that. And I think both of us, independently of each other, we both PM'd Admiral and were like, "Hey, dude, you were right.
You got it. You nailed it. Yeah. I mean, and I can't apologize enough to him for the way I treated him in that third. Because I'll be honest, I just thought you just don't know how this works. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? No, he knew how it worked. I was the one that didn't. But but that article, again, when I read it, I wasn't like, okay, Trump's going to win because of this. But I saw it and I said, I sort of understand why he got the nomination now. I still didn't think it was enough for him to win. But if you look back at it and you start taking the blinders off and you start seeing, there were just so many warning signs along the way that this was coming.
Another warning sign in retrospect, Hillary Clinton's rallies drew, in the hundreds. Trump's rallies drew in the thousands.
Right.
And, we just all had blinders on. It's as simple as that.
And as far as, Bernie Sanders, we were all like, the guy can't win. I really believe had Bernie Sanders been the Democratic nominee, we wouldn't be having this conversation today.
I'm not quite willing to go that far because I don't see the people who voted Trump in, those being white rural, white rural voters, in middle America. I don't see that group at least in large enough numbers to be significant, voting for a socialist Jew from the Northeast.
But he had a good populist message. And he
did, yes.
And this is the thing you got to think about, too. When it came time to the actual general election, he could fight back with Trump on the populist stuff. Hillary couldn't. I mean, she didn't have any populist message. I mean, Admiral was right. She was middle management. She was, she was uninspiring, and she never let her human side show. And I think it was a foregone conclusion that she was going to win. I mean, you could see it on election night. The reason she didn't come out, they didn't have a concession speech ready. They really, I mean, everybody's like they're working on 2 speeches, but people were saying afterwards, like, we don't think she was. Everybody in the world thought she was going to win, even the Trump campaign. I think they were as surprised as anybody that they won.
No, there's a shot of Trump watching the returns go in. He's got like the most surprised look on his face. Like, really?
But we just, there were just so many steps along the way that we missed and that people just made such assumptions on. But I look at it now. I mean, and there was another thing, too, that my brother is... Well, he's a bit of a right-winger, and that's really understating it, but I want to be nice in case he's listening. But he says that there is a media bias. And I always, look, I don't believe that. I mean, I don't believe there's a conspiracy. I don't believe that they're out to do this, that, and the other thing, blah, blah, blah. But I did, as I took a step back, I started noticing little things here and there that I don't think is necessarily a bias as much as it is just being as out of touch as the rest of us were. Like, referring to the Trump vote as uneducated. That's a pejorative. I mean, I don't care how you put it. It might be true, but you call people uneducated and you expect them to get in line behind you? Come on. Why not just say non-college graduates? Why? But little things like that here and there, and it was just all these things started going. Like, once I saw... It's like... when you watch a mystery or whatever, and when it all comes together, you go, oh my God, there were so many clues along the way that I completely missed. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel now. It's like, oh my God, did I miss this? Until finally you go, hey, wait, Bruce Willis is dead in this movie. I get it now. It was just one of those deals.
Spoilers for The Sixth Sense, by the way.
Yeah, well, if you haven't seen it by now, there's nothing I can do for you. But it was just, and now here we are. He's the president-elect, and I don't know if you saw any of the pictures of him when he was at the White House with President Obama, but I've seen that look before, and it's like the dog that catches the car.
He doesn't know what to do.
He's like, well, now what?
Another good example of that, I think, was the picture where he met with Paul Ryan. And Paul Ryan was sort of outlining, what his plans are for, like, a Republican government, and Trump is sitting next to him, and he just, like, looks like that kid who's bored at church. Like, oh shit, like, this is what being president is?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like,
some people think he's going to quit, and I don't know. I mean, I don't rule that. I don't entirely rule that out.
I don't think he will.
Not right away, but I wouldn't be a bit surprised to see him at maybe a year in go, okay, I did what I set out to do, and thanks. Here's Mike Pence. Enjoy.
Oh, God.
I know.
I don't think he will, just because I think he's got too much of an ego. Like, I don't think he wants to go down as, like, the guy who quit.
Right.
And so, if it does get to that, if that does happen, where he just gets bored and doesn't want to do it anymore, I think he at least sticks it out for 4 years and then just says, I'm not running for re-election.
I can tell you right now, I don't think he'll run for re-election. Period. If he may not quit, and I'm not saying that I think he will. I'm saying it wouldn't surprise me a whole lot. Surprise me some, but not a whole lot if he just stepped away after a year or two. But in 4 years, that's when he'll definitely step in and go, I did what I set out to do. It's on you guys now. I can't see him wanting to do this for 8 years. I just can't. But I also think, too, you brought up his ego. If there's anything that might be the saving grace in that, it might be that ego of his. He does not want to go down in history as the guy that, A, ruined the United States, B, was the worst president ever, so who knows? I mean, that may work to our benefit at some point. I really don't know what to expect right now. You showed me a picture earlier today of him holding a flag that said LGBT for Trump, which, first off, was like seeing an alien in the flesh, but okay.
I think I sent that to you saying, like, I don't even, like, what is this?
Yeah.
Like...
But he also came out and said that the law has made it clear on same-sex marriage, which I went, well, okay, that's not the worst thing, like he's going to stay away from that. I don't know what to expect.
In terms of looking for a silver lining to sort of pull me back from the ledge, the whole same-sex marriage thing was nice to see because, well, okay, again, that's one positive thing that we can check off the list, but we've still got a lot of lists to check off before I'm fully okay with all of this. But
not only that, but then he offsets that by offering that Steve Bannon guy from Breitbart a significant position in his administration.
And to go back to the claim your brother made about media bias, I won't deny that there are perhaps biases in the mainstream media, although as far as the United States go, I think it's overblown because if we look at the American traditional media outlets, I think it's clear that MSNBC is essentially a propaganda arm of the Democratic Party.
Not a very good one, apparently, either.
Not a very good one, but it is one. Fox News is a propaganda arm for the Republican Party.
And CNN has Wolf Blitzer.
I watch CNN for my election night coverage, man, and let me tell you, they are way too in love with their interactive map.
Oh, yeah. They're like the Super Bowl, like the networks at the Super Bowl, the World Series, where they always break out some new piece of technology. That's CNN on election night. It's like we got this new thing, and we're going to use the hell out of it now because we paid for it.
I was watching the CNN election night map was infuriating because they always went to it to fill time between a new batch of returns coming in. And what they would do is it was this one guy who would always zoom in on a state, zoom in on individual counties, and then he'd keep switching back between 2012 and 2016 to compare results. And it got to the point where I wasn't even sure what year I was looking at anymore. And yeah, and it was the same story every time. Well, the rural counties are going for Trump, but we'll have to see how Hillary Clinton does once the urban centers, start reporting in. And he kept repeating that and switching back and forth, and it was just insane.
Well, you know what, though? Speaking of that, though, going back to the whole thing with this election, that in itself, the urban centers are going for Hillary, but the rural's going for Trump. Here you go. There's part of the problem in itself right there. Why can't the Democrats? When I was a kid, Democrats were everything that you would expect a Trump voter to be today. Not all of them, but most of them. They were union guys. They worked at factories. They built Chevys. They built Fords. They drove trucks. They did this and that and the other thing. They were the blue-collar, middle-class people were Democrats. Mm-hmm. And somewhere along the way, I don't know what happened, but those people are all gone now. They're not in the party anymore. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. It's just, it's been a weird year. It's just been a weird year.
Yeah. But in terms of bias, I think CNN more or less is pretty balanced.
Yeah.
I think CNN's more or less pretty balanced. I don't even know what CBS and ABC are anymore. Do they even have news divisions?
They do. I think that basically they kind of do the, here's our 5 minutes of this on the nightly news and go to whatever our offshoot is for the rest. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately for CNN, they don't have a network to prop them up like that. But I don't think that, again, I don't think there's a left or right-leaning bias. I think there's a class bias in the media. And I think I saw a little bit of it in the way they described, uneducated voters. That just doesn't sound good to me.
No, it doesn't. You're right. It absolutely doesn't. And I think that is and again, that kind of goes back to what I was saying about how, thanks to the complete destruction of print media in small cities and rural towns, print media used to be that all these towns had at least one newspaper. They don't anymore. Those newspapers are gone. As a result, there is no representation within the media industry of that portion of America.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist anymore. And so because of that, media is now entirely centered in the major urban centers, and anyone outside of that doesn't pop up on their radar, because in the major urban centers, and I don't want to paint too broad a brush, but I think that if we're talking big picture, it's fair to say that in the big cities, the Clinton-esque Democratic view of race and class, of poverty equals black and Latino, probably holds true more or less in the big cities. The realization that there are poor whites is only really had when you get out of the big cities.
Mm-hmm.
But media these days no longer has any representation in that part of the country. And so to them, these people just don't matter.
Yeah,
because they might as well be invisible to them.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't, I know a lot of people want to, claim this was a race thing. This is all about class. This whole election, that's what it was about. It was where you fall on, in the class structure. That's what it was about.
It was a class thing, and you're definitely right. It was not race. It was class. Race only enters into it again to drive the point home to my comrades, perhaps a bad choice of word, on the left. But, my comrades on the left who, for the longest time, either failed to acknowledge poor rural whites or simply forgot about them. And the reason why Trump is elected, it falls on us. We, a collective we, neglected this group of voters who should have been natural fits for the Democratic Party. And because we neglected them, the guy, the big loud idiot who came around saying he knew how to fix a broken system, he got their support, and we shouldn't be surprised that he did.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, he didn't come out and go, hey, look, all Democrats are bad, all Republicans good, which is usually the MO for these elections. It was, hey, look, everybody else is fucked. I'm the guy that can fix all this. I'm the guy. The Republicans are screwed. The Democrats are screwed. And I'm going to take this broken system, wipe it out, and we're going to start over again. Look, it resonated, whether you like it or not. People bought into it, and they bought into it in droves, and places that you'd have never guessed in a million years that they would. But this is a question I had. Mm-hmm. Like, in my case, okay, with let's use Benghazi or the email stuff with Clinton or whatever, and I don't want to say I overlooked this stuff, but you make allowances, I suppose. And I wonder if that was the case with a lot of Trump voters, where they went, okay, there's some racist shit going on here. And again, I think it's horrible if you're willing to overlook racism, but do you think that might have been what happened here? They said, okay, look, he's got some racist qualities and stuff, but I'm willing to look past that for the bigger picture stuff where he's going to wipe things out and fix whatever we think is ailing us?
I think so, yeah.
Because I really don't want to think that I live in a country where 47% of the people are complete fucking racists. I just don't believe that. I don't want to. Maybe it's true, but I don't want to believe it, and I don't think it's the case.
I don't think it is, no. But I think to a lot of people who voted for Trump, they saw the situation in the United States, at least politically, as being very dire. And, history's not short on examples of people who are willing to tolerate some pretty heinous stuff during periods where they feel the situation is dire. And Trump successfully tapped into that. Trump's entire message this campaign was that America was in crisis.
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton's message for this campaign is that it was that America was not in crisis. America was on the upswing. And it's not hard to figure out, to poor rural white America, primarily living in small cities and rural towns with devastated economies, which message resonated with them.
Yeah. It was interesting, that's for sure. It's it's like I asked you when I found out. I'm like, so are you moving back to Canada now? So,
well, Trump promising to tear up NAFTA, considering that's kind of the means by which I am in the United States at the moment. But So no, I'm not moving back to Canada, but I did speak to an immigration lawyer, so that definitely happened.
I just think too that and that's another thing too that I cringe with the Democratic Party is when you get people. I don't know who some of the celebrities were. I think Cher maybe was one of them. If he wins, I'm moving to Canada. Well, you know what? Fine. I mean, look, I love Canada. If you want to move there because you want to move there, that's more power to you. But first off, what kind of American are you if it's like, if I don't get my way, I'm leaving? I'm going to fuck you, then go. That drives me nuts. But
I can also tell you one thing. As a Canadian, that always bugged me because to me, it's sort of, I guess, reduced Canada to sort of this caricature in the American consciousness because, you heard a lot of that stuff in 2008 or 2012. Like if McCain or Romney won, I'm moving to Canada. Well, it's like, well, during 2008 and 2012, we had our government was run by the Conservative Party of Canada. So it's not like we are this liberal paradise that a lot of, I think, Americans on the left make us out to be just because we have national health care. Because I got news for you, almost every other country in the Western world has nationalized health care. That's not a liberal or conservative thing anywhere else but the United States. That's just the way things are done.
Yep.
So this whole idea in the American consciousness that Canada is this liberal paradise, no, that's not what we are. Again, for 10 years, Canada was governed by Stephen Harper and the Conservatives. Now, the Canadian political spectrum is shifted a bit to the left of the Americans, and so, Canada's Conservatives are probably more akin to centrist Democrats than they are to Republicans. But still, we had a self-identified conservative political movement running our country, for 10 years. And even now, even though Justin Trudeau is now in power, Justin Trudeau and the Liberals, it's still Conservatives make up the second largest party in Parliament. So we are our openly socialist party, the New Democratic Party in Canada, they self-describe as socialists. They're a national punchline for their almost regular electoral futility. I mean, we have a parliamentary system. They're always able to get some votes. Every now and then they manage to do better than expected, but the New Democrats in Canada, who are, they're about as left-leaning as you can probably get in mainstream North American politics. If we were this liberal paradise that I think American left-wingers thought we were, then the NDP would be a much more potent force in Canadian politics than they are. Instead, the joke up here is, what do New Democrats and Toronto Maple Leaf fans have in common, and that is the chant, "Wait till next year." So,
I just like I said, it drives me crazy because it doesn't work that way. If I understand, I mean, look, I didn't want Trump to get elected either. I'm not going to lie, but I'm not leaving. I'm not about to treat Canada like some sort of fucking consolation prize. Like, well, I guess I didn't want to hear some fuck. I guess I'll go there. It just bugs me.
To me, it always bugged me as a Canadian because it seemed to be like, well, in America, it simplified Canada. You know, my whole point of kind of describing the futility of the NDP and talking about, you know, Stephen Harper's government, you know, that stayed in power for 10 years is to kind of, I guess, impress upon American listeners that, you know, Canada, like the United States, has its own complex, intricate political culture, and we're not just this left-wing utopia. Like, we've got political parties with vastly different visions for the country. You know, sometimes one party wins, sometimes the other party wins. And, you know, like Americans, as Canadians, sometimes the party that we absolutely despise wins an election, and you just sort of have to live with it, just like you do in the U.S. So, you know.
Well, the other thing, too, is I don't know. Maybe it doesn't bug Canadians, but it bugs the hell out of me that Americans see you guys as America Junior. Different to Canada. I can tell you right now that is not the case. It's a completely different country. It's a completely different country, guys. Got news for you.
Yeah, did you know that you know, Canada is a completely different country with its own laws, histories, political traditions, and all that stuff? Yeah.
Right, yeah. It's like they treat it like you're the 51st state. We just haven't, you know, given you statehood yet, and it drives me insane. I've been there enough times to know. People are like, I can be in Canada. I don't feel like I'm in a foreign country. It's like, shit, I do. They do. It's a lot different there than it is here. I mean, granted, there's a lot of similarities, but there are a lot of differences, too, that I don't think people realize.
Oh, yeah. My friends, you know, back in university, when my friends and I would go into the U.S. Either to catch Leafs games in Buffalo or catch concerts in Michigan, the one thing that always threw us off was that your Taco Bells don't have fries.
Yours do?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow, that's wild. Okay.
And so, you know, right there, you know, I mean, yeah, in terms of countries, you know, we're probably far more similar due to, you know, a good portion of our history being shared. But, yeah, you know, Canada's a foreign country, guys. We've got our own, as I said, our own political traditions and complexities. You know, we're not just this left-wing utopia where everyone votes for national health care every year. You know, that's not how it is.
And it's not the 51st state either, geniuses, so get over that, too.
Yeah, I mean, all you have now, I will say, you know, our politics, I think I mentioned this a few times, you know, tend to be less sports show-esque because
thank God for that, huh?
Like I was saying, during the last election in Canada in October of 2015, the you know, during that campaign, the commercials for the debates were like, join Prime Minister Stephen Harper, Thomas Mulcair, and Justin Trudeau as they discuss the issues facing us as Canadians. Whereas here, it was like, Hillary versus Trump one-on-one for the first time. Yep. And it's like, holy crap.
With the Undertaker's theme music playing underneath, you know.
Yeah, you know, it's like Donald Trump comes out to Vince McMahon's theme music.
Well, you know, but, you know, there's a part of me, too, that just thinks it's hysterical that we have a president that's actually done things in the WWE. You know?
Donald Trump is now the first and only president of the United States to also be in the WWE Hall of Fame.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
There's an entire non-wrestler wing of the Hall of Fame called the Celebrity Wing. Alongside Donald Trump in the Celebrity Wing of the WWE Hall of Fame is William Shatner, Mr. T, Pete Rose, and Cyndi Lauper.
There you go.
I want all of these people to have cabinet positions.
Might as well, right?
Well, apparently there's already a rumor that Vince's wife, Linda McMahon, will be Secretary of Commerce.
You're not serious, right?
It's what I heard.
Wow.
Now, incidentally, after Trump won, and I was sort of processing all this as a wrestling fan, there was a storyline a few years back where Vince McMahon sold Monday Night Raw, the WWE's flagship show, to Donald Trump. Now, what ended up happening was Vince McMahon introduces Donald Trump, and Donald Trump appears on the big video screen. And Donald Trump proceeded to give a speech that I swear to God could have been one of his presidential speeches. I'm going to paraphrase it doing my Donald Trump impression. He was like, Vince McMahon has been in charge of Raw for 17 years. Nothing interesting's happened. I'm going to be so innovative. I'm going to introduce so many interesting, innovative things to WWE Raw, you won't believe it. And I'm like, oh my God. Switch out Vince McMahon for Hillary Clinton. And
wow.
WWE Raw for the United States. And that's basically a campaign speech.
Yep, that's our president, folks. Oh boy, it's
And if you want to talk about, when he met with President Obama at the White House, Obama had this look of, I can't believe what I'm looking at.
I don't know. Yeah, the whole thing was just such a bizarre exercise because you had Trump there, who literally looked like he was the cat or dog that had just caught the car. I don't know if he was scared, stunned, excited, I don't know what, but it was just, you could tell he didn't quite know what to think. Either that or he was bored out of his mind. I can't figure out which.
Like I said, when I saw him with Paul Ryan, and Paul Ryan was actually talking about government things, Donald Trump looked like a kid at church.
Yeah, because sometimes I would look at his face in those pictures and I think, wow, he just looks stunned. And I thought, he also kind of looks like, when's this going to be over? When can I go do fun stuff again? I don't know. It's going to be a very, very interesting next 4 years. But, I think I was talking to Zach before the football show last week after we'd learned the result of the election. And I said, I think that something that you and I have both forgotten is that when we go way back to the very first political show we did with Jack, you and I were both talking about Trump going, and this is before all the other stuff that started happening, like the racism and the misogyny and all that.
Yeah.
And we were like, hey, socially he's not that bad. He's not anti-gay marriage. He's not, and this and that and the other thing. So maybe he wouldn't be the first guy or the first candidate to use a certain portion of the electorate to get elected. Used to be that they would use the religious people, to put it nicely, and cater to them to get that extra push that they need. I don't know that. Maybe it's just wishful thinking. But maybe he pushed some of those buttons just because he needed those people to put him over the top. I don't know. But we both are on record as saying that he wasn't that bad. Not to say he was good. We weren't endorsing him or anything. I don't want people to get the wrong idea. But we were both saying that he wasn't terrible when it came to social stuff. So who knows what we're going to get here. I really don't know.
Yeah. Already he said that he's not going to fight. He's not going to try to undo legalized same-sex marriage. He's going to accept that. He's already said that he's going to keep certain aspects of Obamacare, even though he campaigned on repealing it.
Well, you know what? I forget where I saw this, but somebody said that he's such an egomaniac that what he'll do, he'll tweak things here and there and then be able to put his name on it and go, see, this is what I did. Yeah, I don't know.
He'll change one or two things and then just call it Trump care.
Right, exactly. So, I really don't know what to expect. I want to hope for the best. I don't want to see minorities or people of the LGBT community have to worry. I don't want that. That's horrible.
Honestly, the biggest thing keeping me sane on that front is the fact that Mike Pence is the vice president and as such has less authority in D.C. than a meter maid.
Good.
I don't know if you've ever seen the show Veep.
No, I haven't.
But that seems to be a pretty accurate representation of just how powerless the vice president is. And if that's what Mike Pence is going to be doing for 4 years, then fine.
The vice president has two jobs. 1, stay alive. 2, break a tie in the Senate. That's it. Those are his responsibilities pretty much, I think.
I love how the vice president is president of the Senate, casts a tie-breaking vote in the Senate, and yet is not allowed to contribute to debate in the Senate. And the only reason he's not allowed to contribute to debate in the Senate is because John Adams was such an asshole as vice president, and they added that rule just to keep him quiet. It used to be under the Constitution, when it was first ratified, that the vice president, as president of the Senate, could participate in debates. But John Adams was such an asshole who wouldn't let anyone else talk that they amended the Constitution specifically to keep him, specifically to shut him up.
Well, yeah, he was something, our boy John. And the problem now with me, every time I hear John Adams, I think of Paul Giamatti because he played him in that miniseries.
That was a good miniseries.
It was. It really was. But when I think of John Adams, that's who I think of now is Paul Giamatti, which I think that if John Adams was like Paul Giamatti, I'd be okay with that. Back in, you know what I mean? I don't know. It's a strange new world we live in. That's all I know. And
as the Chinese proverb goes, may you be cursed to live in interesting times.
Well, and we certainly got that.
I mean, think about just recently, relatively recently, we've gone through, the Brexit vote.
Yep.
Trump's been elected president of the United States. Donald Trump is president of the United States. Just process that.
Oh, I'm still... Dude, try me again next week. I'm still not there yet.
The guy who wrote The Art of the Fucking Deal is president of the United States.
I know.
We witnessed, for the first time in over 500 years, a sitting pope abdicate his position.
Yeah, we did.
We've seen, over the course of my lifetime, the Soviet Union has fallen. Russia is now, back, even though it's not the Soviet Union anymore. I've seen, 2 wars in Iraq. 9/11 happened.
Yep.
War in Afghanistan, war on terror. ISIS has, risen and might be falling soon. Depends on how that goes. But I mean, and the Cubs have won the World Series.
And the Cleveland Cavaliers. This was funny. I saw a thing today for the one little bit of sports we'll do here, where there have been 7 or 9, either way, it was teams in the entire history of playoff sports that have come back from a 3-1 deficit, and the only time it ever happened twice in one year was this year. And the funny thing is that Cleveland was on both ends of it.
Well, did you see LeBron James at his Halloween party with the 3-1 lead skeleton?
No.
Pissed off some Warrior players because there was some skeleton holding a sign at LeBron James's Halloween party, holding a sign that said 3-1 lead.
Oops.
But not just the Cubs. I mean, if you just want to look at baseball, since the early 2000s, the Red Sox, the White Sox, and the Cubs were like the 3 really long, like turn-of-the-century long droughts all broke.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And so,
I mean, it's if you to go into interesting times, I mean, you talk about in your lifetime, in my lifetime. Now, granted, it was a very short part of my lifetime, but I was alive when they still had white and colored drinking fountains and such in the South. Mm-hmm. Now granted, I was barely, I'm hardly old enough to remember it or anything, but that happened. It's just, I don't know. It's, I guess what's the old saying too? If you live long enough, you'll see everything. Mm-hmm. And I think with last Tuesday, I don't know what would be next. It could be more. I mean, where do we go from here? We said it last week. Where do we go from here? Now what?
I'd ask President-elect Trump, but I don't think he's
Yeah, he's probably as clueless as we are. I don't know, man.
I don't think he knows what to do.
I'm hopeful that it won't be as bad as we all think it's going to be. You don't want. I mean, I don't want his ridiculous social policies. Obviously, I'm glad he stuck with stayed out of the gay marriage thing. I think that's great. I don't want him to fail because that's bad for everybody. But I don't want him to succeed in certain aspects either, so I really don't know where to fall on the whole thing.
The thing to keep an eye out, I think, going forward, is the illegal immigration thing. He's
already backing away from that, though.
He said he's going to deport between 2 to 3 million illegal immigrants who are convicted. Who have been convicted of crimes, except that in order to reach that number, he's got to cast a very wide net, and he's probably going to have to include some immigrants who are here legally who have been convicted of crimes.
Well, I was going to say, are there 2 to 3 million illegal aliens that have been convicted of crimes?
No.
I was going to say that sounds like one of those things, like as a joke. First off, you need 2 or 3 million illegal aliens that have been convicted of crimes. I don't know. It's here we are. Best I can say.
Tell you one thing though, since the election, because if you make a donation to Planned Parenthood, you can make it in someone else's name.
Okay.
People have been making donations to Planned Parenthood in Mike Pence's name in record numbers.
That's pretty funny. I'm sorry.
And one more thing that I really wanted to address about the election. People who are protesting Trump's victory, I get it. At the same time, part of the beauty of American democracy is the willingness to accept the peaceful transition of power.
Yeah.
Furthermore, and I don't want to cast any disparaging shadows on anyone, but if you look at a map of how people under 35 voted, Hillary wins this thing in a walk. In a Reagan-esque landslide.
Yep.
And so the fact that didn't happen leads me to believe that a lot of the young people who are now protesting didn't vote.
Right.
And look, I saw the same thing in the UK in the 2015 elections, because a similar kind of thing happened in the 2015 national elections in the UK, where the polls had the Conservatives neck and neck with Labour. And then when the election was over, the Conservatives won a clear majority and Labour was decimated. And then you had all these people who were protesting a Conservative victory. And it's like, if only there was an election where you could have had your voice heard.
Right.
And it's like, look, I sincerely hope that, maybe fear is a great motivator. And if that's what it takes to get you off your ass in 2020 or even 2018 to vote in the midterms, then, go for it. But, part of if Trump being president was something that impacted you to such a degree that you feel motivated enough to protest over, then it should have been enough to get you out to a voting booth to vote for Hillary Clinton to ensure it didn't happen.
Exactly. And in the ill-fated political thread on our boards, I think my last post there was, look, none of us are happy about this, but we have elections every single year in this country. And if you're really that concerned, don't walk away now and wait and come back in 2020. Get your ass out there and get to work. Well, work on the local level elections, because that's where the Republicans kicked our asses to start, and they finished the deal this year with Donald Trump. But the grassroots thing, that's a real thing, and you got to get out there and you got to get. It's not going to be easy, but that
is the problem with the left-wing young left-wing vote in general. And I say this as a left-wing voter under the age of 30, so I fall into this demographic. Broadly speaking, people my age, of my political orientation, don't show up for elections that aren't sexy.
I was just going to say, local elections, off year, state elections, state legislature stuff, not sexy, but that's where it starts.
That's where it starts because it's at that level. Because, it's local elections that decide what textbooks your children learn from.
Yep.
It's local elections that decide the shape of congressional districts.
Yep.
Why do you think the Republicans have a stranglehold on the House, even though the country is roughly split 50-50 between the two parties? It's because they have won so big at the local level that they have gerrymandered everything. And I'm mad at them, but at the same time, I don't blame them. They did exactly what they needed to do to ensure that they won to this degree.
Yep.
And they did it easy because not enough people on the left cared enough to challenge them at the local level.
That's exactly it. And this is where it all begins. It's presidential elections are the most fun. They're the sexiest. They're the biggest. They're everything else. But if you want to get it done, you've got to start at the bottom and work from the movements don't work from the top down. They start from the bottom up. Mm-hmm. And usually, Donald Trump didn't. I mean, this wasn't something where he just showed everybody and went, "Hey, check this guy out." He tapped into something. It wasn't like he was there and everybody came to him. He came to them, and don't think otherwise. That's the way these things work. He found out what the problem was, and he exploited it, and he got elected president. You've got to start at the bottom, and you got to work. And I said it on the boards. I'll say it here. If you're really that concerned, get your ass out there. You can start right now with local elections. If you want,
get in contact if you're a local chapter of the Democratic Party. Say you want to volunteer.
Yep. And I even said this on the boards, too. You'd be surprised. You can actually end up making money off this. I mean, I hate to be so cynical about it, but it can be done. I've been doing it for years.
Or hell, if you, depending on what the situation is in your local area, you might be in a position to actually run for office.
Right. Well, I told you the Libertarians wanted me to run back in 2004, I think it was.
Oh, I would have done it just to get myself on a ballot.
I thought about it, but I didn't want to have I didn't want the scrutiny of like my financial records and stuff. Not because I'm rich or anything. I just didn't want to be embarrassed. Was basically what it was. I didn't want people to know.
But on the other side of that, if you were the Libertarian candidate, I doubt anyone would have paid you much mind.
No, but in a local election, sure they would, and that's the thing. It's it would have been like I just didn't want them snooping around and because believe me, I have I don't want to call it a checkered past, but there's some things I've done that I'm not terribly proud of, like when I used to drink and stuff, and I didn't want all that stuff coming out.
I understand. I understand that. There's definitely shit I've done. Like, if I ever run for public office, all you have to do is try to ask certain classmates of mine in London, Ontario.
Right.
For between the years, for like a 5-6 year stretch from like 2006 to 2011. Just ask around London, Ontario, and not happy. But
I was just going to say too, like in the county I live in, every single Republican on the ballot won. Every single one of them. I'm pretty sure that had never happened here before. And I also know from working in these unsexy elections that I have over the years, it is all but impossible to knock off an incumbent in this county, and it happened in droves this time. I mean, it was just like if you were a Republican, you won. If you were a Democrat, you were losing. Didn't matter anything else. So they are important because now the county I live in is just like our federal government. It is controlled entirely by one party now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so don't think that there's more to it than just the presidential stuff. Is what I'm saying. So,
exactly.
So yeah, if you want to change it, like I said, we can still save this, but you got to get to work, and you can't just sit back and wait for 4 years. You got to go now and get going. So,
focus on local elections, focus on 2018 for the midterms, and go from there.
Yep, that's all you can do.
You got to turn out.
And, bitch and holler to your representatives now. If he does something you don't like, let him know. You'd be surprised how easy it is to get in touch with at least someone of some significance in those offices. It's not that hard to do. Mm-hmm. So, all right, anyway, we got anything else? Or are we ready to step off into the brave new world here and, see if we're still allowed to do a show next week?
Hashtag basically the resistance.
That's right. Hashtag basically the resistance. It's going to be our new sign-off. So, yeah, anyway, so you got any last thoughts, or are we done?
Check out @RealSentPrime on Twitter to see Sentinel Primes.
That's right.
Yeah, Jack and I from basically a geek show made a Sentinel Prime Twitter account parodying Donald Trump. It's kept us far more amused than it probably should. But Sentinel Prime wants to make Cybertron great again.
Good.
And he is, of course, the namesake of the Sentinel Prime Memorial Region of Excellence.
Absolutely.
And,
speaking of which, the Glorious Tournament of Victory is not that far off, folks, so start thinking about that, too.
Oh, yeah. I'm already kind of slowly building up a list for that.
There you go.
But we've even got James Roberts, who is the lead writer for IDW Comics' ongoing Transformers series, he commented he finds the Sentinel Prime Twitter account funny.
Get out of here! That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So that's nice. You can read about Sentinel Prime and his campaign against hashtag Crooked Optimus and hashtag Phony Alpha Trion and how he's going to make Cybertron great again. So check it out.
Since we're pimping our own stuff, if you'd like to hear my thoughts on something very important, 5 questions about Led Zeppelin 4, you can go to infrared41.tumblr.com and check it out. Led Zeppelin 4 turned 45, and they had this article, and I thought I should answer those questions too, so I did. But anyway, we will be back next week with a regular edition of Basically a Sports Show. Zach, to be blunt about it, had his head up his ass tonight and thought he could do the show and couldn't. And in his own words, sorry, 100% a case of me being dumb, end quote. So that's what he said. So anyway, we'll see you next time. You know where to find us on Twitter at Basically Sports. You can go to the website, basicallyasportshow.com. Subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, and YouTube. Find us on Facebook. And with that, we'll see you next time.
And just to cover our own asses, all hail President Trump and his glorious new regime.
Hashtag basically the resistance.